Hello and welcome back to Tinker Talks Guns. Recently, I reviewed the ATI Fatboy 45. This is a compact 10-shot double stack alloy frame 1911 variant with, as you would expect in a gun this short, opal barrel, full-length guide rod, etc. And I had some issues with this gun, mostly that it wasn't finished when I got it. I had to fit the barrel. I had to remove machining burrs off the locking lugs and a couple other little things. But eventually, after enough fussing with it, tweaking magazine feed lips and other small tweaks and shooting a bunch of ammo through it, it started working well. Now, this week I've replaced the stock recoil system, which is the double plunger type, with a single flat wire coil Evolution Gunworks unit. I did have to slightly modify the reverse recoil plug to fit the gun properly, but that was not a big deal. A few minutes with a file. Because it's designed for a Colt Defender. Now, this gun is listed as having a 3.1-inch barrel. I've measured it, it's 3 1/4 inches. Who knows? But now the gun works quite well. I've put another 100 rounds through it and 20 rounds of defensive hollow points, and the gun has functioned flawlessly. So I'm rather pleased with it. But in the initial review, I chronographed the 230 grain gold dot hollow point, which you can see is a pretty respectable looking hollow point. And it achieved the rather unimpressive average velocity over 5 shots of 753 feet per second. For a massive 289 foot-pounds of energy. That would be super respectable in a 38 special or maybe 38 special plus P, but in a 45 it's rather uninspiring, and I was concerned that at that low velocity that this hollow point, as good as it looks, would not function. And speculated that 185 grain jacketed hollow point might do better out of the short barrel. And I said I would find out, and I'm going to. Thanks to channel benefactor CJ, I have a fresh, clean, pristine block of ballistics gel. Thanks to my clumsiness, I have a pair of jeans that had a huge rip in the leg, so I could cut it up to have the 4 layers of denim. No, this is not precisely the FBI protocol, but it's close enough. So, I had some 185 grain V-Crown from SIG that have performed very well in gel tests out of larger guns. So I thought that might be a good candidate. Now, the 185 grains are going to be higher velocity, and hollow points are, generally speaking, very velocity dependent. So I thought it would be good to test those. Now, unfortunately, when I did my chronograph session, I forgot to bring these. So I'm not sure exactly how fast they're going. But the important thing is whether or not they will work. While at the range, I purchased some Norma 185 grain jacketed hollow points. And they are somewhat uninspiring looking. It's a rather small cavity, but it is very well shaped. And the jacket is nicely scored, and I chronographed these while I was there, and they achieved an average over 5 shots of 830 feet per second and 283 foot-pounds of energy. Is that extra, less than 100 feet per second going to make a difference? And how much of a difference is the hollow point going to make? We're about to find out. But before we get into the weeds on that, I'd like to thank my supporters on Patreon. This is very much a shoestring operation, and your contributions help more than you know. I'd also like to thank channel benefactors, those individuals and businesses like CJ, who have contributed to the channel in innumerable ways and really helped make it work. I'd also like to thank Rain City Shooting Center for providing material support for these videos and the channel. So, let's go have a look at the gel setup. Okay, as you can see, the denim is in place. First up is going to be the 230 grain Spear Gold Dot fired at a distance of approximately 10 feet. So as you can see, that got pretty good penetration. It appears to have some expansion. And we'll measure that all in a bit, but I have 2 more shots to fire. Next up is the SIG Elite Defense V-Crown 185 grain jacketed hollow point. Okay, that zipped right through the first block of gel, and there is no evidence of expansion whatsoever. Last up is the Norma, and we'll see how that goes. We get this back in place. I'm going to be shooting to this side of the block this time. And here we go, Norma 185 grain. And the Norma 185 grain has zipped straight through the block without any expansion or apparently particularly even slowing down. Okay, let's see what the cheap-ass Home Depot yardstick can tell us about penetration. The 230 grain gold dot penetrated 13.5 inches and came to rest facing backwards. There is modest disruption. You can actually see flutes in the wound track, but it is at best modest disruption. On top, we have the SIG, or the Norma rather, 185 grain jacketed hollow point, which shows no evidence whatsoever of expansion and penetrated more than 16 inches. We'll take that apart in a minute and see where it got to. Now on the bottom, and I'm going to flip the block. On the bottom, we have the V-Crown 185 grain jacketed hollow point. And it's hard to see here. There is a modest amount of disruption. Let's see if I can get it in focus. You can see there is a little bit of disruption, a little bit of flute spiraling, and the bullet exits at 16 inches. So here is the backstop blocks. If I can get the thing to stand up. Come on, there we go. So we have a bullet falling out of the block. Let's check out which one that is. And you can see it is completely plugged and flattened. So it went all the way through this 4 inches of gel and smashed against the wooden block behind it. And we're gonna have to see if we can find the other one before we can actually guess which one this is. So you can see one of the bullets, and that appears to be the V-Crown. Made it all the way through the 4 inches of block and stopped. So we can call that pretty legitimately 20 to 21 inches of penetration. It is completely plugged with denim. So this must be the Norma. And that's hilarious because I expected the 230 grain to do this and the 185s to do better. And I was completely, totally backwards. Okay, here on the tabletop, we can see that the 230 grain gold dot, see if I can get this to focus. There we go. You know, it gave it the old college try at expanding, but it didn't quite, and half of it, I have to say, expanded really pretty decently, especially given the extremely low velocity of, 750 53 feet per second average. And there is a lot of denim in that cavity. Let's get a probe. Come on, focus. There we go. Let's get a probe and see if we can pick that out. Okay, well, you can at least get a decent look. Yeah, that's most of it out. So it did not fold back the hollow point very much, but it did work somewhat. And so I'm pretty impressed with the gold dot. The Norma was going, let's just look at the Norma. The Norma was going 830 feet per second. And lots of denim, little evidence of expansion. I mean, basically none. And it hit the board, the maple behind the block, hard enough to smash the bullet, which was obviously yawing when it hit. Very unimpressive result out of this short barrel. Might be different out of a 5-inch. Who can say? Well, people who've tested it, obviously. Okay, now let's get back to the Sig V Crown, which we don't know how fast it was going, but it wasn't fast enough. And you can see a lot of denim in there. So the denim did its job admirably. And okay, and you can see the bullet just did not, while the hollow point, the point itself with the jacket, which is very thin, did try to open up, but the bullet did not expand. That interior portion did not split into the flower like it's supposed to. So, I have to say, a really short barrel 45 like this may be a kind of dubious proposition. You know, that's okay. That's better than ball. You know, I'll give it a provisional pass. If we fired a few more rounds, we might see a more consistent result. But if I were to carry this with any of these loads, it would definitely be this one. So that ran very much contrary to my expectations. The bolt that I expected to fail was provisionally acceptable. And the bullet that I expected to possibly succeed failed utterly. And the other bullet that I did not expect much of, the Norma, behaved exactly pretty much like I expected it to. That's why we test these things, because you don't know. You know, you have expectations based on your experience, observations of other people's tests and all this stuff, but in the end, you got to test it yourself. So, I'd like to try a lighter weight gold dot or two, and maybe the Underwood Lehigh Extreme Defender 135 grain, because in theory at least, those should be less velocity dependent than a hollow point. Well, that's for the future. Thank you very much, CJ, for providing the block of ballistics gel. I really appreciate it. If you like the video, please hit like and subscribe. Oh, and before we get too excited about all this, bear in mind that penetration is very important. All the rounds penetrated adequately. Hit location is of supreme importance. You have to hit the important stuff to break it. It's better to do that with an expanding bullet, but it is not the be-all and end-all. It's sort of the rather important icing on the cake, but it isn't the cake. Thought I'd better make that note before people jumped on it in the comments. Anyway, hope this finds you well. Stay safe, take care, and we'll talk to you again real soon.